What's going on, folks? Today in Stu's Garage we've got the 350Z in here. This is my wife's car, and we're going to be pulling the headlights out of here and doing a really simple retrofit on here. So if you don't remember me taking the bumper off last time, it's really simple. There's just a few of these plastic tabs in the front that you got to pop out. I think there's a couple underneath, and then there's a couple on the corners. So we're gonna go ahead, pull that front bumper off, and then there's 4 screws holding the headlights on, so I'll show you guys that in just a second. All right, so on your Nissans and Infinitis, you typically have these little pop-up rivets, little plastic rivets, and to get these things off, you just pop the top up like that, and they should pull right out. You may have to wiggle it a little bit, but I'm not gonna force that one right now just because I want to use 2 hands to get it out. But anyways, they're pretty simple. These things, yeah, just like that one. These things do tend to break, so you know, if you're really stickler about having all of your pieces in, which you should be, you may want to have some extra ones on hand. Just be prepared for these things to break, because sometimes they get old and then they break. So anyways, we're gonna pop all of these out. We're gonna get the bumper off of the car, and then we're gonna get the headlights out. Okay, and underneath the car, you're gonna have a row of these 10mm screws. Again, this is typical of pretty much any Nissan Infiniti setup that you see. They go all the way from corner, all the way around the front to corner, and they hold this little under tray on. Alright, and last, my most favorite part about removing any bumper is your corner screws. So on the 350Z, you've got the one up here on the corner, and I don't remember if you have to remove the lower screw down here and the one above it, or if it's just 2 screws, but we're gonna go ahead and get those out on each side, and then the bumper is gonna be ready to come off. Alright, next up we're going to remove the actual headlight. Alright, to get this off, you've got 4 screws. You've got one here, you've got one underneath, you've got one all the way here at the corner that you can't really see. That's going to be a little bit difficult to get to, but not too bad. And you've got the one here at the top. Okay, you're not going to have a lot of space to pull the headlight out once you get it all disconnected. The connector actually is underneath here, and so I'm just going to push this thing back in. Actually, what I'm going to do is see if we can get you guys in there. Okay, you can't see it, but it's a pretty tight space for you guys to see, but actually they've got the headlight wiring actually pinned to this frame rail. So what I'm going to do is just unpin it. That should give me some slack. Then I'll be able to lift up the headlight and actually be able to see the connector so I can unconnect it. Alright, now that we've got the headlights outside of the car, you want to go ahead and start unplugging all of your electronics, and you want to remove everything from the headlight that you possibly can, because this is getting ready to go in the oven. You also never want to place your headlight face down the way that I have it, because you'll scratch it, but I already did it, so I can't really undo it. So I'm going to turn that back over, and I'm going to work on it carefully. As you can see here, it looks like 3 Phillips head screws are holding that in. I shouldn't have to worry about these security bits that I see here, even though I do have a security driver set. We'll see. It looks like this plug will simply slide off. I'll probably just have to loosen it up with a flathead, and all the rest of this stuff unplugs, and I should be able to get all of that removed. Alright, so I've got the headlight all stripped down at this point. Was able to get the harness off of the back. It kind of snakes through this area right here. There's a connector inside which you'll be able to find. Can't find it right at this moment, but there's one connector that you're going to have to disconnect that kind of snakes all the way through here. It's really easy to figure out. I went ahead and removed the HID bulb and ballast. The ballast is sitting over there on the table. The bulb is inside of this ESD bag because you really don't want to damage those because they're very expensive. And just from the looks of it, it looks like you could almost do, if you wanted to do a projector retrofit, it looks like you could do it right through this hole because you've got 2 screws for the projector, but we're going all the way on the inside. So these things are all stripped down, they're ready to go into the oven. Alright, one last thing before we pop this thing in the oven, and this goes with pretty much any retrofit. You want to go around the edges and make sure that you take care of any screws that are around the outside edges that are also holding the lens in place, because you're definitely not going to get that lens free with those screws in there. So we're going to go ahead and pop those screws out. This is going to go into the oven, and we're going to turn that down to about 275. And once that's ready, we're going to throw that in there. Okay, we're just about ready to put this thing in the oven. Everything's preheated. One more thing that I wanted to point out before I put this thing in there is also keep in mind that you've got clips going around the outside of this lens. You want to make sure that you unclip those as well once you get started. All right, so there it is. Alright, so that was actually a lot easier than I anticipated, so it wasn't so bad. So, as you can see, this is what the inside of the headlight looks like. You can see that the cover and whatever you want to call this stuff is separate from the rest of the housing. When you take this thing apart, you want to be careful not to get the glue. You don't even want to touch your reflective surfaces as much as you possibly can, because it's really hard to clean this stuff. So you want to be careful not to get the glue on it. I did get a little bit of glue on the lens here, but that's glass, that'll be easy to clean off. So I'll go ahead, slap the other one in the oven, do the same thing, and then it's time to start the creative stuff. Alright, next up you're going to want to unscrew a few of the screws from the outside. I think there's like 3 screws that you're going to have to take out. And this inner bezel, or whatever you want to call it, will pop right out. Alright, some of y'all were laughing because I was using the grinder so much in just about every video, and today's not going to be any exception. So what I have here is I've marked off on these internal lenses. These are cosmetic, but I definitely want to keep the OEM looking cosmetics going. But I do have to add some kind of clearance for the LED tubes that I'm installing. And since all of this stuff comes really close to the lens of the headlight, I have to make a couple of channels for those LEDs to go through. So I have here marked off what I need to trim off of here. And then also on this one, I'm going to need to take a chunk out of this here and take out these humps for the LED running lights that are up here. I have to chop into all 4 of these, I think. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get to cutting. Alright, so at this point I'm actually attaching my LED to the housing. I'm going to be alternating between hot glue and this Loctite adhesive. The hot glue is good because it bonds instantly and it can hold things in place, but this stuff isn't really good over time and with varying heat conditions, so that's why I'm going to use this Loctite in between. So I got everything started. I put about an inch of hot glue on here, and I'm going to run the Loctite adhesive to about here where it starts to curve, and I'm going to do another bead of hot glue and then run the adhesive all the way up here to the top. Alright, we've got our LEDs mounted up just the way they need to be. I didn't show you guys the process because it was a little bit tedious. I needed two hands to do it, but like I said, I started off with the hot glue. That really doesn't stick well, so for the rest of it I use this Loctite Power Grab, which is one of my favorite adhesives to use for projects. So. Alright, so everything's reassembled at this point. We got the bulbs back in, and the lenses are back on the headlight housings. The way I was able to actually reattach these lenses is I actually heated up with a heat gun and got the glue nice and sticky and stuck everything back together, and then put my screws back in. Just made sure everything was pushed down and lined up and all the clips were lined up. And that's usually good enough for most applications, but just for a little bit of added security, just to help keep any leaks from happening, I went and ran silicone all the way around my seams just to help seal out any water where there might possibly have been a leak. So I'm gonna go ahead and let these things dry overnight. Like I said, I put the bulb back in, and once these things are all dry, we're going to put the wiring harnesses back on and get these things installed in the car. Alright folks, it's the next day and these bad boys are dry and they're ready to go in. So before we put the harnesses back on these things, the last thing I need to do is check and see what wires I'm actually going to use. And pretty much based on the function of these lights, I think what I'm actually going to do is just hijack the wiring for the turn signal and parking light bulb. The bulb's going to go in the socket, but I'm pretty much going to be deleting this. I'm not going to use this anymore. And it actually has the 3 wires that I'm going to need. I just need to figure out which one's which. The black is obviously ground, and between the blue and the green, one of these is turn signal and one of these is parking light. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually plug this back up to the car, flip on the turn signal, and cut a wire and see what happens. Alright, so I'm only getting the turn signal to work. I'm not sure why the parking light is not coming on. So I'm going to do a little bit of troubleshooting and see if I can figure out what wire is what. Okay, so I reconnected the LED board that I deleted from inside the headlight, and this seems to be working fine with the parking lights. I'm not really sure what's going on with this thing, but the important part is the turn signal does work. So what I'm going to do is actually grab the signal off of this to power the DRL strips that we put in, and I'm going to take the turn signal off of this. So I just have to turn this back on again, cut the wire, and see what happens. If the turn signal goes out, then I got the correct wire. Okay, back to the lights for a second. A pretty cool thing, since I'm going to be using the power output for the parking lights that I actually deleted from the original headlight build, I'm actually able to go ahead and use the factory connector. So I went ahead and wired this in, and it's actually going to connect up seamlessly to the harness just like it's meant to be. The only thing now is this yellow wire that's sticking out here. This is going to be my turn signal wire, so I'm just going to have to go back to the car, find my turn signal wire, splice this in place, and everything should be good and ready to go. Okay, so I turned my turn signal on, I cut this green wire, and the turn signal stopped. So I'm guessing that my green wire is my turn signal wire, and my blue wire is the power wire for the parking light, which I still don't know why it's not coming on, but I'm going to end up cutting this blue wire anyway because I don't want this bulb to come on anyway. That's not going to do anything from now on. Alright folks, it's all finished up. I would love to show you guys how it looks right now, but because of the lighting in here, it's not going to look like anything, so I'm actually going to have to wait for the daytime. So it's going to be several hours for me, but lucky for you, you get to see it right now. Alright folks, it's time for the reveal. Let's see what this thing actually looks like in the daylight. So these things are actually super bright. In the daylight, in the direct sunlight, they don't look super bright, but you can actually see them really well. The camera doesn't quite do it justice, but maybe I'll show it to you again when it gets a little bit dark. But, you know, now my wife thinks her headlight game is on point, but I don't know if she's got anything on this right here. I don't know, folks. Let me know in the comments who's got better headlights. Alright, the sun's gone down a little bit, so you can take a look and see what these things look like. There it is. Looks pretty cool, pretty cool. And also take a look at the turn signals.